Hello friends, this video on nutrition in plants part 7 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. So this was all about autotrophic nutrition in plants. So we saw that how plants prepare their own food and in what form do they store the food. Now I told you about heterotrophic nutrition where there are plants which depend on other plants or animals for their food. So now we are going to talk about the heterotrophic nutrition in plants. So some plants depend on other plants or animals for their food. So they are not self-dependent. Now why they are not self-dependent? Maybe because they cannot perform photosynthesis. So if they can't perform photosynthesis, they will not be able to prepare their own food. So in that case, they will either feed on some other plants or they will feed on some other animals. Like I gave you example of insectivorous plants. So some plants feed on insects also. So that means these heterotrophic plants will depend on other plants or animals for their food. They lack chlorophyll because when they lack chlorophyll, they will not be able to, there will be no photosynthesis. When there is no photosynthesis, so obviously the plants cannot prepare their own food. So they are heterotrophic. So in heterotrophic nutrition, let us first talk about the parasitic plants. So what are because in heterotrophic again you have many different types. One can be parasitic nutrition, one could be saprotrophic nutrition. So again we will discuss about each of them. So we start with parasitic plants. So these are the plants which take nutrients from another living plant. So they depend on some other plant. So basically these plants, they live inside the body of another plant. Like I gave you while trying to explain the term parasite, I think the best example that I can give you is that of a worm which lives inside the human body. So a lot of worms or tiny creatures live inside our intestine. So they obtain their food and nutrition from our body. So they basically are parasites because they live inside our body and obtain their nutrition from our body. So similarly, there are certain plants which live on other plants and obtain their nutrition from that plants. So such plants are called parasites. So these plants which live on other plants, they are called parasite. And the plant on which they depend for their food, this plant is called host. So host is that plant where this parasite is living. So let me give you a very common example of, so let us take one very common example of a parasitic plant, and that is dodder or cuscuta. So both are the same plant. So cuscuta or dodder. So here you can see these plants, these yellow colored plants, very thin leafless vines which you see here, they are these parasitic plants. Now can you tell me why are they yellow in color and not green? Exactly, due to lack of chlorophyll. Now since they do not have chlorophyll, they cannot perform photosynthesis and they cannot prepare their food. So these plants, they depend on some other plants. So here you see this cuscuta are the yellow plants and they are actually living on some other plants which are green in color. So this host plant, so basically this green plant is the host. So this host plant is going to perform photosynthesis, prepare its food, and the cuscuta is going to obtain its food from the host plant. So how is it going to obtain its food? These plants have root-like organs that penetrate into the stems of the host plant, and through those root-like organs they derive water and all other nutrients from the host. So these plants, especially the dodder, they do not have chlorophyll. In fact, even if they have very little chlorophyll, which is not enough for photosynthesis. So this is one example of a parasitic plant. Another example is the Australian Christmas tree. So this is called Australian Christmas tree because of its appearance. That is how they look like. So these plants are also called Nightshade. So that is also another name of the same plant. So these plants are equipped with green leaves. So if you look at these plants, they have green leaves. So that means they have chlorophyll. So they can photosynthesize and provide its own nutrition. But that means they are capable of photosynthesis, they can prepare their own food, but still they maintain parasitic root connections with other plants to exploit their water supplies and obtain water from them. So these plants are like, even though they are capable of preparing their own food, they still want to steal food from other plants. So that is how they are. Now since they are stealing food from other plants, again through their root connections, so that means they are parasite. So you see, in the first example, in this example, these plants, they do not have a choice than depending on other plants because they can't prepare their own food. But in the second example, even though they are capable of preparing their own food, but still they also try to obtain food from other plants. So both of these are examples of parasitic plants. The next plants which we will talk about are the insectivorous plants. The name itself says that these plants feed on insects. So here the leaves are modified into structures that help to trap insects. So for the best example for insectivorous plant is the pitcher plant. So in pitcher plant, if you see, the leaf is modified into a structure which looks like a pitcher. So you see, it's like a jar, a pitcher with a lid. So you see, this acts as the lid and this is like a pitcher. So that's how that's the beauty of nature. So these plants, in these plants, their leaves are modified into these structures. Now what happens is, these leaves act as a prey trapping mechanism. They act as insect trapping mechanisms. Now what happens is, whenever an insect comes near this pitcher, there is a deep cavity inside. Now inside this pitcher is present a lot of digestive juices and all. So once the insect falls into this pitcher, then those digestive fluids actually help in digesting that insect. Like whenever we eat something, the digestion happens inside our body because of the various digestive enzymes which are present inside our body. Similarly, inside this pitcher, a lot of digestive fluids are present. So as soon as the insect falls inside the pitcher, the insect gets digested by these fluids. Now as soon as the insect comes near this pitcher, the rim of the pitcher is extremely slippery. So this part is very slippery, and that is why as soon as the insect sits here, the insect slips inside. So the insects fall into the trap, and as soon as the insects fall inside, the lid closes, and that's how the insect gets digested inside. So there are also some hair-like structures which are present here on the rim, and these hair-like structures actually help to bring the insects inside. So the liquid inside the pitcher drones the insect and gradually dissolves the insect inside, and the insect gets digested. So that is how these insectivorous plants work. So here also you see they depend on other insects, but at the same time these plants, they also have chlorophyll and they can also photosynthesize, but this is an alternative mode of nutrition. So they are autotrophic, but at the same time they are heterotrophic also because they depend on other organisms like other insects. So this is about the insectivorous plant. So, thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more educational videos with a better experience. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for latest updates. Thank you once again.